Mark, I guess I thank you, Senator McConnell and distinguished head table and ladies and gentlemen. A great pleasure being with you again. This is my 33rd breakfast with you, and I've enjoyed every one of them. The early ones that I first came to, Senator Wendell Ford, I remember, and Gene Snyder and Larry Hopkins, Carl Perkins, and others. It was always a pleasure being here with you, to welcome you to your nation's capital, to share with you what little tidbits of knowledge we can spread out with you, and mainly to listen to what you have to say. So that's why this breakfast is always important to us. We've got two new members of the House with us this year. Tom Massey from the 4th District in Northern Kentucky, and Andy Barr from the Central Kentucky Congressional District. So we're thrilled to have these two new members with us. I remember when I first came and spoke last because I was the lowest on the totem pole. By the time they got to me, everything had been said. It was always a challenge to try to find something entertaining and useful to tell you after all of those stalwart members of the House and Senate had made their case. Well, Mark Haney, I can't tell you how proud it makes me feel to have my hometown hero as the president of this great organization. And he's done a fantastic job. I want you to know that a lot of us appreciate, Mark, what you do with this organization. But now, since he opened the door, there's a tale going on around home down there. I don't know whether it's true or not, but it seems a while back, Marlene and Mark arose, and Marlene says, "I guess you know what day this is, don't you?" Well, Mark didn't, but he thought it must be their anniversary. So he, during the day, goes out, sends home a dozen roses, brings her a new fur coat, takes her out to dinner at the Holiday Inn, comes back home, and they go in the front door. Well, Mark is quite proud of himself for what he's done. So she takes off that beautiful new fur coat, holds those dozens of roses and admires them. And he's beaming all over. And he finally says to Marlene, "Well, honey, what do you think?" She says, "Mark, this is probably the greatest Groundhog Day of my life." You know, I'm glad we've got a lot of the spouses, the wives, here with us, and children. It's great to have the family unit here together, and we want to be sure that the kids especially have a great stay in the Capitol. But we're especially glad to have the wives here. You know, they say marriage is an institution where he rules the roost and she rules the rooster. I found that to be true in my case, and I'm sure a lot of you men, if you admit it, will say the same. Well, the senators have touched on, I think, the major issues going on with us now. Tomorrow, the so-called sequester sets in. We'll see how deep the impact goes. No one really knows just how severe the impact on the nation will be. But it's different. It's an $85 billion slash, and that's no chicken feed. You know what most people don't realize or haven't thought about, of the total spending the U.S. government does, 2/3 of it is an automatic pilot. We only actually appropriate, sit down and decide how much we're going to spend for this, that, and so forth. We only appropriate about 1/3 of federal spending. When I first came here, it was just the reverse. We appropriated 2/3, and 1/3 was on automatic pilot. Automatic pilot meaning Social Security, veterans' pensions, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, and 100 other entitlement programs, so-called mandatory spending. If you qualify for one of those programs, you get the money out of the Treasury without the Congress appropriating it. So 2/3 of what we spend nowadays, we don't sit down and decide. It's just automatically happening. And that's growing as rapidly as it can. It's like a skyrocket. But in the meantime, what we actually appropriate, so-called discretionary money, about 1/3, is diminishing. Since I took over the job of this committee, we've actually cut $95 billion from what we spend on what we decide to do. That's the biggest since World War II. So we're controlling our discretionary spending. It's on a downward slope. But the entitlement spending is on a skyrocket plane. And that's where we've got to address the problem. If you're going to address it, you have to do that. But I don't see a serious effort. We've tried to engage the president to help reform those programs, to save them for the future, for you and your kids, and all the while try to control somewhat the rapid rate of growth. But he simply fails to engage. He wants more taxes, and he's willing to shut things down until he gets more tax revenues, on top of what he got a month ago, 2 months ago. So that's where the battle is these days. It's whether or not you decide how you spend your money, or whether or not you want your federal government to spend your money for you. Senator McConnell, Senator Paul, and most of our delegation believe that you are the people who should decide how to spend your money. And so that's the battle that is taking place here now. Now, on top of that, there's another event that is you're here on the eve of, and that is the continuing resolution. Because the Senate failed to pass a single appropriations bill or budget, they haven't passed a budget in 4 years, but they didn't pass a single appropriations bill during the year. There's 12 of those bills. The House, through our committee, we passed out all 12 of them. But the Senate failed to act. And
who's in charge of the Senate?
I'm getting to that, Mitch. I'm getting to that. If Senator McConnell had been majority leader, which I believe he will, then we'll pass a budget and appropriations bills every year. And I think beginning in 14, he will have the chance to do just that, because I think he'll be the majority leader. Nevertheless, because the Senate failed to act, the majority in the Senate failed to act, we had to have one great big bill at the end of the year, appropriations bill, to fund the entire government. And you can imagine all of the shenanigans that go on when you get that big a bill in the middle of the night on the eve of the deadline, trying to get something done sensibly. So we've got this continuing resolution, which continues until March the 27th. So at the end of that time, unless something's done, the government will simply shut down entirely. Sequestration will be a Sunday school class compared to a shutdown. So we're working on a bill. In fact, I'll present it, it's my bill. I'll present it to the caucus this afternoon. It'll be on the floor of the House hopefully next Thursday, which will be 2 weeks in advance of the shutdown date, to pass a continuing resolution which will take care especially of the deep cuts that the military is fixing to sustain. We had a meeting with the Joint Chiefs yesterday who told me that the situation with them is critical, and that the state of the economy and the funniest threat that we have. And they urge the passage of this continuing resolution, which will reform the way they, and free them to the way they spend money. They're locked into, under this old law, they're locked into spending money for projects that went out of existence a long, long time ago. Big waste. So that's also going on even as we speak. And then thirdly and finally, we've got this thing called debt ceiling coming due sometime in early summer or so, where we bump up against the ceiling on what we're legally allowed to borrow to finance the deficit that we're in. And that is another earth-shaking possibility. So those are the three big events that are taking place here in the next few weeks as the year progresses. Well, enough of the fun stuff. Every year, when I first came here, it fell my lot to give a tour of the Capitol. Being the youngest or newest member, I did that. I started giving tours of the Capitol to the Farm Bureau that came to town, those that wanted to go. And I've done that every year, and I enjoy it more than you do. Sharing with you the history of your great country, and sharing with you the history of that great building, the Capitol building, which is so chock full of history and important events of our country. And we're going to do that again this time, except we can't do it immediately after the breakfast, because the president's coming to the Capitol, I think it's late morning, to dedicate a statue in the Statuary Hall to Rosa Parks, the civil rights icon. And they're going to occupy the Capitol, so we'll have to work around that. So at 2:30, I think it is, the arrangements are being made to get you to the Capitol at 2:30, in which case we'll do the tour this afternoon. Now, this is for the members of my congressional district, but historically and traditionally, a lot of others tag along with them, and so you're invited to join us. So I guess they will tell you how to make those arrangements. Let me close with this. Mitch is not, and you, Mark, are not exaggerating when you talk about the tremendous accomplishment that Mitch put together this past New Year's Eve. That permanent reduction, that permanent exemption on the death tax will mean so much to the families that are here this morning and all those back home who want to be able to pass that farm or business along to their kids, their descendants. Thank you. We were faced with when that tax elapsed, or when the exemptions elapsed, we were faced with whether or not you were to do something about your estate now. And with this great relief that Mitch was able to engineer, and it was Mitch that did it. Joe Biden may have been part of the conversation, but I know who drove the bus. That was so significant to millions of Kentuckians and people around the country that we can't say enough in praise of Mitch and his talents. I think this probably is ranked in there with the tobacco program, the buyout program, that he engineered a long time ago. I think those two big events in his career, as far as Kentucky's concerned, are two that we can point out as being significant in a major degree. And so, Mitch, we're indebted to you. Thank you for letting me be with you. See you soon. God bless.
Thank you very much. That's great. Good to see you.